Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Hi, my name is Kayla, and I'm the host for a podcast called A Little Wicked. On our show, we discuss true crime, such as serial killers, lesser-known crimes, and killers you might not have ever even heard of. We also talk about conspiracy theories just to leave you wondering about the world around you, and we dive into lore, legend, and paranormal beings. You can find us and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Good Pods, Stitcher, and really just about anywhere you can listen to a podcast. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram to get updates on all of our episodes. And remember to always keep it a little wicked.
Hey, Rainbow Warriors. This is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for young children, and maybe not even for some adults. I tend to swear like a sailor, and I'm kind of proud of that. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, CJ. Well, the holiday season is upon us full force now. You know, I really used to love Christmas time, especially when my daughter was little. Back then, my mom was still alive, and she'd come over Christmas Eve and stay the night. Christmas morning, we'd all wake up, and I'd make coffee. My daughter would run out to the living room in search of what Santa left. And as time went on, I lost my mom to pancreatic cancer. My daughter got older, and I started to make it my mission to make sure that people I knew were not alone for the holidays. Ironically, since I moved to Oregon a month ago, that's exactly what I am this Christmas, alone. Thankfully, I still have my fur babies, Nilla, Callie, and Lily. Or my forensic team is what I call them. My daughter and her new boyfriend were going to come and stay a few days, but the forecast has a lot of snowstorms in it. And after driving those crazy curvy roads with no snow, I told her not to come, because I'd rather see her alive in the spring after the snow melts. Being alone does kind of put a knot in my throat, but I'm trying really hard to think of it as just another day on the calendar. I got a really, really sweet note from one of the listeners. Jamie, thank you. You always know the right things to say. Find me on the socials as either Beyond the Rainbow or Rainbow Crimes. And should you be able to help support this one-woman show, please check out my website at beyondtherainbowpodcast.com. On the site, I have links to my merch store at TeePublic for shirts, mugs, and other fun items, and a link to my Buy Me a Coffee account. Buy Me a Coffee is a pretty cool site. It allows me to write up some short true crime stories and post them, kind of like a blog. In the next couple days, I'll probably put some new posts on there. And you don't have to buy me a coffee to check the posts out. But if you do decide to support, it can be a one-time thing, all for the price of a coffee. And I have a huge thank you to Amy J. Holden. Thank you, Amy, for buying me a cup of coffee the other day. I sure appreciate you. Also on my website is a photo gallery of past cases and a list of missing but not forgotten LGBTQ+ people. This episode's Missing But Not Forgotten segment will be reported by my bestie Paige from Reverie True Crime.
Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. This episode's Missing But Not Forgotten LGBTQ person is Sequoia Cooper, formerly known as Devin Cooper. Sequoia is a 33-year-old black trans woman who disappeared on August 31st, 2021 from Columbus, Ohio. She was last seen driving a 2009 black Ford Fusion around the intersection of Howey Road and Weldon Avenue around 11:30 p.m. There really isn't too much more information to Sequoia's disappearance than that. She was last seen wearing a black and white summer dress and black and white baby fat sandals. Sequoia was rocking lemonade braids at the time. Not sure what lemonade braids are? We do our research around here. lemon braids are named for Beyoncé's Lemonade album and how she was seen in it often wearing a side cornrow style. Now, Sequoia is 5'5" and about 145 pounds with brown eyes. Sequoia lived with her life partner, 52-year-old Richard Harris. He said that she left to go to the store for some bottled water and never came back home. He said also that she had received a text just before that. He tried to call her phone, but it appeared that her cell phone was turned off. At the end of September, the community took it upon themselves to fan out the area between the store that Sequoia was supposed to go to and her home with Richard. Richard was there, but had to retreat back to his SUV to gain composure because he broke down in tears and said, quote, "This is some of the worst shit you can possibly go through." Richard, Sequoia's family, and her friends have all been putting out flyers and looking at gas station surveillance tapes in the Linden area of Columbus. Richard gets a bad feeling when he talks to the police, saying that they keep asking how many tattoos she has on different body parts, and it makes him worry that they know more than they're saying. But law enforcement insists that they have nothing and have no reason to believe foul play is involved in Sequoia's disappearance. Richard received a text or an email saying that someone saw her at a gas station, and when he went to go look at the surveillance video, there was nothing indicating that Sequoia was there. He's also received the horrible DMs from scammers who are demanding money for Sequoia's safe return. Should you have any information on the disappearance of Sequoia Cooper, please call the Columbus Police Missing Persons Unit at 614-645-2358. That's 614-645-2358. Back to you, CJ, at Seabreeze Studios.
Thank you, Paige. You can find Reverie True Crime where you find this podcast. And we're both co-founders of the Darkcast Network. If I may, I'd like to address something this episode. Not every case that I've covered has had an appreciative surviving victim or appreciative families of missing or non-surviving victims. Now, most absolutely have expressed their gratitude, but every once in a while there'll be someone who's not happy about it. I sometimes try to contact people beforehand if I can to ask if it's all right if I cover the episode. I did that with one young man whose case I covered. He was a survivor story of torture. I learned of his story and I followed him on a social platform and he followed me back. When he followed me back, I DM'd him with my intent of covering his story. He never responded one way or the other, so I went ahead with the episode. The day it came out, I saw that he had posted a very passive, "I hate when people tell my story without even asking." And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then he posts, "Yeah, they didn't even tell it right." I read that and I laughed, because I pretty much told it the way he told it when he filmed himself for his Facebook page. It was a bit of a slap in the face. But I moved on to other cases and just kind of pushed it to the side. Recently, I reached out to a mother whose gay son went missing in another country. She wrote me back, and she said, no one can tell her son's story but his family. And then she said, but it's all out there in public. And I know that you're going to do what you will do for your own profit and gain. Now, I know Rainbow Warriors. I already divulged how little I earn doing this podcast. You know I don't do it for profit and gain. I do it for the love of my community. So I emailed her back and I told her I would respectfully stop researching her son's case and I wouldn't cover it. I think she was surprised because she wrote me back thanking me for showing respect of her request. We exchanged a few more emails back and forth, and I think by the end, we understood each other's positions a lot better. I still will not cover her son's case, but it got me thinking about what she said. No one can tell my son's story like his family. And there's so much truth to that. They are the ones that are directly involved. With that, I just want to say if you're a victim or a friend or a family member of a victim that I've covered, please know that I've only covered their case from a place of love. In my heart, I think it's so important to spread the word about missing LGBTQ+ and about crimes against the LGBTQ+ community. It'll bring attention to cases of marginalized people, and it might even bring closure or positive change for some. When I cover these cases, I might add a little bit of dramatization based on how I think I'd feel or how I would react when describing a particular incident. Because when I listen, watch, or read about true crime, I put myself into the situation. And that's what personalizes the story for me, and it makes it relatable. But please know this. I never mean to be disrespectful to any victim whose case I cover. With that, let's dig in. It was New Year's Eve and folks were out partying like it was 1999. And not just because Prince said we should party like it's 1999. They were partying like it was 1999 because it was 1999. And everyone was getting ready for the world to end at midnight because of the Y2K phenomenon. Many decided if the world was about to end, they were going to go out and celebrate it, not stay at home and live in fear. Biloxi, Mississippi, which rests comfortably on the Gulf of Mexico, was a pretty happening city that night. There were a number of nightclubs in Biloxi that were having pre-Y2K apocalypse parties. And 24-year-old Jamie Ray Tolbert, he was planning to be there at one of the nightclubs. He was getting dressed at home and he had his younger brother fix his tie. Jamie was all dolled up in a tux. He had never worn a tux before. He had never even went to his prom at school before. Jamie graduated high school in 1993. When he was in school, Jamie would get picked on for his weight an awful lot. Many days he'd come home in tears after getting picked on. Eventually, Jamie would lose 50 pounds, and he'd be at a weight that was comfortable for him. And it wasn't even the comfort that Jamie strived for. He belonged to a local gym, and he was determined to keep it off and stay healthy. Although there was a day that Jamie quit the local gym. And to learn why he quit makes me super hopeful that maybe there's more people like Jamie out there. You see, one day at Jamie's gym, an overweight woman was there working out, only to be taunted by some other women there at the gym about how heavy she was. Fuck that! If my fat ass is at the gym or out walking, that's good on me for trying. And I think Jamie felt the same because he quit the gym right there on the spot. If they were going to allow bullies to be members, he didn't want any part of it. He left and he went to console the woman who was getting picked on. Jamie's heart was very sweet. After high school, Jamie became certified as an EMT. And he worked for an offshore oil drilling company called Noble Corp. He was a safety supervisor. Back to the evening of New Year's Eve, 1999, Jamie was thinking about his chunky days of high school and the other kids would pick on him. Nope, this night was going to be different. Jamie, with a thinner body and new confidence about himself, went outside and started his truck. He was on his way out to a gay nightclub called Joey's in Biloxi. He was going to meet some friends. The night was going to be fun-filled with drinking and dancing. And then sometime after midnight, everyone realized there was no zombie apocalypse. The world had not ended. Y2K did not destroy everything. It was just another New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. At some point early on New Year's morning, Jamie had come across a couple of strangers. One was 19-year-old David Cabot, and the other was 22-year-old Jeremy Bentley. Both these young men were from North Carolina. Somehow, these two young men that he met subdued and kidnapped Jamie, and they took his truck. And then the three drove to Grand Bay, Alabama. It was along this route that the two young men strangled and beat Jamie to death. And then they disposed of Jamie's body in a remote wooded area off a secondary road in Grand Bay. Shortly after dumping Jamie's body, David and Jeremy took off again in Jamie's truck, and they were able to take Jamie's wallet and his credit cards. On their getaway trail, David and Jeremy ended up back in their home state of North Carolina. They used Jamie's bank card several times in North Carolina, and then they decided to flee their home state, and they took a cross-country trip all the way to California. Every step of the way, they used Jamie's credit cards, and they were still driving his truck, too. I don't think these boys even thought about the paper trail that they were leaving behind. And thankfully they didn't, because that's what got them caught. Meanwhile, back in Mississippi, Jamie's family was frantic with worry. He didn't come home New Year's Day, and that was a Saturday. Nor did he come home on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Jamie was supposed to be at work in an offshore oil rig on Thursday. It was then that his family reported Jamie missing. About 6 months later in California, David and Jeremy had been found by police and taken in for questioning. This was way up in Northern California at a Wairika police station. A deputy from Sheriff's Department in Alabama flew out to California to question David and Jeremy, because at this point, Jamie was still just a missing person. David was questioned first. He told the deputy he and Jeremy kidnapped, robbed, and killed Jamie. He then gave the deputy a vague idea of where to find Jamie's body. 2 hours later, Jeremy was questioned, and pretty much he gave the same answers as David. Only Jeremy was much more specific about where they had left Jamie's body. A call was placed to the deputy station, and after some searching, the sheriff officers were able to find Jamie's remains. At that point, David and Jeremy were extradited back to Alabama. They were charged with capital murder and they stood trial. David was found guilty of capital murder, and he was sentenced to life without parole, although David insists that it was Jeremy that murdered Jamie. The killing is said to have been a thrill kill. It's been said that these young men wanted to see what it was like to kill someone, which makes this so fucking senseless. Jeremy's defense put in a not guilty by reasons of insanity plea for him. And then Jeremy was found mentally incompetent to stand trial. 2 psychologists claim that Jeremy suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and that he had multiple personalities, which is now referred to as dissociative identity disorder. Jeremy claimed that he thought he was one of 7 supernatural beings that was chosen to play a part in the upcoming Armageddon. But he just wasn't sure if he was supposed to be on God's side or Satan's side. A look into Jeremy's past showed a violent and disturbed child from a very young age. After years in a state mental facility, the hospital was trying to say that Jeremy was faking his mental illness and that he should be forced to stand trial. But a judge found Jeremy not guilty of capital murder by reasons of insanity. And then in 2012, Jeremy went to the courts to ask to be released from the hospital based on his mental defects. He was denied, and the judge ordered that he continue to stay in the mental facility. In 2014, he again appealed for release based on mental defects. The district attorney fought for Jeremy to stay locked up. She felt if he were to be released, he could hurt or kill someone else. In the hospital, he did have at least one unprovoked incident. He punched and he knocked out a Vietnamese patient. And then Jeremy didn't act upset or like he was angry at the man. He just knocked the guy out and went about his business. And once again last year, Jeremy appealed again for release from the hospital. As far as I can tell, he continues to lose his appeals, and he remains housed at the Taylor Hardin Secure Medical Facility in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It seems there has been some unicorn justice for Jamie. Rest in power, Jamie. Our quickie case this episode comes to us from New York City. I think there's an old saying, too many cooks spoil the soup. I guess you could hold that saying up to a person who has too many lovers. You might have to change the wording around a little, like, too many lovers could get you killed. This is in fact what happened to a 40-year-old man in New York City just last month in November 2021. Ernest Diaz had been a male sex worker, selling himself for survival sex in his younger years. Ernest was bisexual, and he enjoyed the intimate company of both men and women. In his adult years, he and his longtime girlfriend had a couple of children together. Ernest also had a boyfriend that he had been seeing for 20 years. The boyfriend was even godfather to the children of Ernest. That boyfriend was 56-year-old Vito Baza. Vito came from a family of very well-to-do, wealthy people. Vito got angry when he learned that Ernest had taken a new girlfriend. Vito already had to contend with Ernest's longtime girlfriend that he had children with, but now Ernest was adding yet another woman into the mix? This was just getting out of hand for Vito. The day after Thanksgiving on November 26th, Ernest went to visit Vito. He was trying to work up his nerve to break up with Vito. When Ernest arrived, he was wearing a brand new jacket. It was a gift from his new girlfriend. Ernest told Vito that. And the fact that Ernest was strutting around in this new jacket from another woman, it enraged Vito. He was shaking with anger and jealousy. So, as I mentioned, Ernest was there to break up with Vito. Well, instead of breaking up with Vito, Ernest decided he wanted to take a shower. So he took off his clothes and he bathed himself. And when he came out of the shower, scorned Vito was standing there with a large knife in his hand. He lunged at Ernest, and he repeatedly stabbed him until Ernest staggered into the hallway of the luxury apartments that Vito lived in, and he died. Vito was arrested, and he remains at Rikers Island prison until his trial date. He told the police, "Yeah, he pissed me off, so I killed him." How's that for a confession? If I hear more about what happens at Vito's trial, which I assume is probably going to be late into next year, I'll be sure to update you guys. Rest in power, Ernest. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. Remember, it's not a crime to be gay. Unless you're a murderer. Happy holidays, everyone. And I'll try to have one more episode before we start our new year.